Hey and welcome, I'm Hammeh, and in this latest Overwatch Tours video we're taking you on a journey through the lore, map interactions and easter eggs of King's Row. One of Overwatch's hybrid maps, King's Row holds a significance in the Overwatch story through being both an emblem of the struggles between Omnics and Humans over the last 30 years in the universe, the current home of Tracer, and a place that a few other of the Overwatch cast have links with too. Time to run you through the map's lore, interactions and cool little details. Firstly, the lore. Well, whatever happened during the first Omnic crisis in London and the UK 30 years or so ago, it's clearly left a lasting impression on the citizens. Although King's Row is in theory an upscale, cosmopolitan neighbourhood of London, just beneath its peaceful surface, tensions between Omnics and Humans are running high. While much of modern England was built on the backs of Omnic labour, Omnics themselves have been denied the basic rights that humans have. Most Omnics nowadays are forced to live in the dense, claustrophobic city beneath the city, known by some as the Underworld. On the eve of a historic peace accord just 7 years ago, King's Row was seized by an extremist faction of robots to some, terrorists to others, known as Null Sector, taking Mayor Nanda, a younger Takata Mondata, and many other prisoners captive in a power plant. After nearly a month of conflict, the British government forbade Overwatch from intervening, even while thousands in London needed medical aid. Overwatch theoretically were powerless and unable to intervene. Their Blackwatch covert operations unit was suspended due to its coming into the public eye and disrepute. But for reasons unknown, Gabriel Reyes, Blackwatch commander, had still dispatched Jesse McCree to London. McCree's intelligence led Commander Jack Morrison to dispatch a strike team against both the wishes of the UK government and presumably Overwatch's director, Petrus. A team of 4 Overwatch agents, Angela Ziegler, Reinhardt, Chief Engineer Lindholm, and the newly activated cadet Lena Oxton attempted to rescue the hostages. From the end of the seasonal Uprising event, we're assuming that the outcome was successful, but of course there will be huge political ramifications because of this. What will Overwatch's consequences be for going in without permission? There have also been other goings on in King's Row. Sometime between the events of Uprising and the present day, probably in the last couple of years or so, Junkrat and Roadhog both visited on their worldwide crime spree in a caper to steal the crown jewels. More recently, King's Row has played host to another tragic event, attempting to broker better relations between Omnics and Humans, the same as he did in the King's Row Uprising. Takata Mondata, now the leader of the Shambali, once again took to the streets of King's Row in a rally. Sadly, in spite of the best efforts of Tracer, who happened to be in the area at the time, the terrorist organisation Talon succeeded once more in infiltrating sovereign airspace without consequence and assassinating him using their most effective weapon, Widowmaker. In the present day, King's Row is still a place of conflict, although we saw it in Christmas in the Reflections comic in a temporary state of peace, as Tracer managed to thwart a mugging before joining her partner Emily and Winston for Christmas, whilst finding a Christmas present at the same time. In spite of this Christmas relief, Omnics are still not allowed in certain places in King's Row. The Fox and Bear pub has a sign outside banning them, for example, with graffiti, placards, campaigning posters, and the evidence still seen in Are You With Us? It looks as though that Omnic rights are no further forward than the compulsory registration they were subject to 7 years ago around the events of Uprising. Of greater concern is that recent demonstrations by pro-Omnic rights protesters have resulted in violent clashes with the police, and for now it seems that King's Row is a town divided and a solution is nowhere in sight. There's a whole bunch of fun interactions on King's Row, telling us about the background of the area, London and our cast's relationship with it. Tracer, of course, is happy to be home.
Back in my old stomping ground.
And after a hard day of fighting, she's totally happy to take a break too, either a little bit to drink or a little bit to eat.
Shall we nip to the pub? I could murder a chip sarnie.
Now, Widowmaker's long interaction with the level was live before the Alive short, I think, referring of course to her assassination of Mondata. Time will tell if this was a single death that could change everything.
The sight of one of my finest kills. That day, I felt alive.
And the effects of the assassination of Mondata are still felt by Genji and Zenyatta. As Master and Apprentice, they share a reflection on the state of Omnic rights when they spawn.
Does the suffering of the Omnics here trouble you, Master?
It does. My brother Mondata gave much to improve their lives, but it was not to be.
It's been a while since the Moment in Crime video release, but let's not forget Junkrat and Roadhog have also visited King's Row, in a heist to steal the crown jewels too. I wonder what happened to all the jewels they stole anyway.
God save the king.
God save the king! Remember that time we stole the crown jewels? All hail King Jameson Fawkes the First! And, Duke Roadhog? What is your name anyways?
Mako. Pretty sure they're still mad about those jewels we stole. I miss that crown.
And Junkrat sums up pretty neatly what's happening on King's Row when he spawns on attack.
So we're delivering a bomb to scrap some bots, and I'm getting paid for it. My kind of job.
Torbjorn also has some strong feelings on Omnics when he spawns on the level. However,
You ask me, the Brits have their heads on straight. Omnic writes, tuh.
given his recent experiences with Bastion in its binary comic, I wonder if his attitude to Omnics might be changing somewhat. And finally, Lucio has King's Row as a stop on his world tour, and is clearly having a little time off in the West End of London, or Theatreland as it's known.
Let's not waste time. I have tickets to a show tonight.
Now, amidst the pretty serious story of King's Row, there are a few cool little Easter eggs and cultural references. Firstly, we've got Moriarty's fine books. Of course, that's Moriarty of Sherlock Holmes' villainy and infamy, the figure that Holmes is always striving against, and in a couple of books, the two have some pretty entertaining capers. The Mondata Memorial, of course, you might see down by the Meridian Cinema, that was added after the events of Alive, and of course there's the big Mondata statue dominating the square. If you have a look at the Meridian Cinema's film posters, there's actually a difference between present-day King's Row and that of the Uprising event. So in present day we have Some Like It Bot, which is of course Some Like It Hot, the 50s I think film with Marilyn Monroe, about two musicians who dress in drag in order to escape from mafia gangsters who they saw commit a crime. We also have Hero of My Storm, starring a certain Hana Song, Diva of course, and Thespion 4.0. I always think Thespion's a reference to Calculon in Futurama, the acting robot. There's also, I think, a Thespion 3.0. You can see a lot of references to Thespion on Hollywood, including a picture of him. Check out my map lore and Easter egg video for Hollywood if you want to see a bit more of that. In Uprising, there's actually a bit of a difference. Going back 7 years, it seems as though there were some slightly different productions on. We have Giacomo Puccini's Botska, that's a reference to Tosca, a 19th century opera. It's set between a conflict between republicanism and royalism, with kind of two star-crossed lovers, Caravadossi and Tosca herself. Following a similar theme, the other post in Uprising is Giuseppe Verdi's Aida, or Aida. This one's set in Egypt, and the Egyptians have captured and enslaved Aida, a Nubian princess. An Egyptian military commander, Radame, struggles to choose between his love for her and his loyalty to the pharaoh. And to complicate the story even further, the pharaoh's daughter, Amneris, is in love with Radame's, although he does not return her feelings. Again, this one has a little bit of a tragic ending. I do love the reference here because it's set in Egypt, and also in the back we can see Anubis, the Anubis AI that, of course, featured in Farah's comic mission statement. Very, very cool. So there we have it, that's King's Row's lore and a little bit about Easter eggs and some other things. Finally, let's have a little bit of a speculate. Well, some interesting things that I thought. What was the UK or Britain's response to the first Omnic crisis? This is a question that's actually been asked by a guy 2 years in a row at BlizzCon in Overwatch Q&A panels. I wonder, speculation here, Britain has of course a very proud history of aviation and engineering, and of course is known for the Spitfire, the Battle of Britain in World War II, Concorde in partnership with the French. Tracer of course is a pilot. I wonder if there was some kind of airborne response. We know the Omnics had dropships after all, as we've seen in the last Bastion battle. And then again, of course, maybe not every country had a program or one fixed thing to deal with the first Omnic crisis. The Crusaders, for example, were a German response, Mecha was the Korean response, the Soldier Enhancement Program was apparently already in preparation in the USA. Perhaps Britain just suffered a lot. Particularly to do with Uprising, I do wonder what happened to the Omnics in King's Row after the events of Uprising. If Overwatch was able to resolve the situation, the Omnics went from a state where they had this touring complex being created for them, as we've seen in the Uprising origin story, to living underground in maybe the ruins of the power station. So how did this happen? Even though Null Sector are Omnic extremists or terrorists, I'm wondering if the Omnic population at large in London was blamed for what happened, even though they were not part of Null Sector, a big bunch of them presumably. As a result, I wonder if maybe Omnics got ghettoized effectively after this. But how the Omnics got from the state where there was going to be this big peace deal, there was going to be this special place for the Omnics to live, to living in the underground, is a bit of an interesting story over the last 7 years. Finally, I wonder who the people attempting to bomb the Omnics in the present-day King's Row are. Remember, as an attacking team on King's Row, you're taking an EMP bomb to the Omnic ghetto in the underground. The defending team is kind of attempting to stop them. So, as in the events of Uprising 7 years ago, the plot of King's Row today is still pretty dark. Thanks very much for tuning in to this Overwatch Lore Tour of King's Row, where we've gone into the story, interactions, Easter eggs, and a bunch more. If you like this video, please do throw a sub, throw a like, let me know in the comments what you think about King's Row, and anything else you'd like to see of Overwatch's lore and story. I really appreciate it, it really helps me out. If you like Overwatch lore and story, please check out all of my explanations, analysis, speculation, and more on heroes, maps, comics, animated shorts, and of course, interactions and voice lines in the playlists below. Big thanks to all of my patrons on Patreon who help me keep making longer lore videos with their support. If you'd like to see how you can support from just $1 a month, please take a click through the link here too. Cheers for tuning in, I've been Hammeh, take it easy.